In today's My Hero Academia video, we explain to you why the theory about the origin of Quirks, which says that an artificial virus was created and then spread by mice, must be true. We do this by showing you all possible clues and connections that prove that something is secretly going on behind the scenes of the My Hero Academia society, beyond the plot of One for All versus All for One. This video is important because it has been confirmed that My Hero Academia will end in 2022, but the plot goes much deeper. While All for One can be defeated, it's only a matter of time before the Quirk singularity doomsday destroys humanity. So if the Quirks were artificially created, could this mean that the Quirk singularity doomsday is not an unintended side effect, but actually the main goal of a secret organization? The perfect plot for a My Hero Academia sequel. Also, only a small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video. Let's go! In the first episode of My Hero Academia, we were told that no one knows where the Quirks originally come from. They just suddenly appeared. Since then, more and more people have been born with Quirks, with currently 80% of the world's population. And it all started with the birth of a luminous baby. This baby became known as the first Quirk user, and that laid the foundation for the Hero Society as we know it today in My Hero Academia. However, one very important question remains a mystery. Is the story about the origin of the Quirks true or not? I am sure that almost everything said about the shining baby is actually true from the public's point of view. The question, however, is not whether people were lied to about the first publicly known Quirk user, but whether they were told the whole truth and whether there might be more to the first public manifestation of a Quirk than just the explanation that it happened all of the sudden and completely unexpectedly. You see, I use the word public a lot because the story about the origin of the Quirks is, after all, only what the public knows. But how do we know that the first generation of Quirk users was not artificially created? The official explanation in the word of My Hero Academia, not from Horikoshi, the creator of My Hero Academia, which is a big difference, is that Quirk manifestation is simply a part of human evolution. People with Quirks are the next natural stage of humanity. But think about it, the way evolution works is that a species evolves over several million years into a more efficient being that adapts to its environment. One famous theory is that humans evolved from sea creatures millions of years ago, and due to environmental changes and altered behavior, it was more efficient to live on land, so these creatures slowly adapted to this more efficient way of life. But a fish did not suddenly give birth to a human being who then built gigantic cities. It happened over a period of many millions of years, during which a species slowly approached land, and over many generations that species evolved into new species that became more and more suited to living on land, until many more generations passed, during which new species evolved that slowly lost even their ability to live in the sea, and evolved more and more into what we now call humans. It took us 4 billion years to go from a bacterium to a human being. And here we are at My Hero Academia, where scientists and probably also the government claim that the manifestation of Quirks is part of natural evolution, where suddenly the next generation possesses Quirks. But that makes no sense. There was no environmental need for the awakening of such Quirks. Moreover, the Quirks did not evolve slowly, which is the definition of evolution, but they were literally just there suddenly, which is the definition of genetic mutation. That is a huge difference. Evolution occurs naturally over millions of years, whereas a genetic mutation is artificially caused and occurs suddenly. Something similar to evolution and more suitable to My Hero Academia would be something like just one baby was born with a weak form of a Quirk, and then that person had other children who also manifested something similar to Quirks, because they are genetically related. And then over thousands of generations, all people slowly manifested these Quirks. But in My Hero Academia, suddenly several babies were born at more or less the same time with Quirks. This looks like artificial genetic mutation, not human evolution. One theory was explained to us by Shizaki. This theory is actually a theory within the My Hero Academia universe that attempts to explain the Quirk origin. The fact that the characters in My Hero Academia themselves theorize about the origin of Quirks is an indication that we should do the same, and that the real truth is still unknown, at least is not confirmed. This theory is that Quirks actually developed from a mutation that comes from a virus spread by mice. So Quirks could be a symptom of genetic mutation caused by a virus that has spread in the world of My Hero Academia. Although there is no evidence to support this theory, it is still the only theory in My Hero Academia that goes beyond this simple evolutionary belief, and is also the main motivation of the villain Shizaki. Shizaki believes that Quirks are a disease that must be eliminated so that humanity can return to its natural form. Therefore, he treats Quirks like a real disease. He even wears a mask that resembles the mask of the doctors who treated people at the time of the Black Plague. Literally an antivirus or antibacterial protective mask. His entire character and character design, and thus the entire 4th season of My Hero Academia, would not make sense if there was nothing about Shizaki that pointed to the true origin of the Quirks, namely that the Quirks were artificially caused by a virus that was spread by mice, meaning that everything was planned so that humans manifested these so-called meta abilities sometime. We explain why someone will do such a thing a little later in this video. As I said, while there is no evidence to prove this theory, there is a small hint that this theory might actually be true, and this hint is none other than Nezu, an intelligent mouse. Nezu is a genius mouse that has been experimented on by humans, which is why he holds a deep grudge against humanity that comes out from time to time. This is not done intentionally but seems to be more instinctive. This raises the question whether this instinctive grudge against mankind could originate from a time before he manifested his quirk, and thus before he developed intelligent thinking and awareness, thus from a time in which he was still a normal mouse. Much speaks for this possibility. First, if Nezu was already born intelligent, he would certainly not be such an easy victim for experiments, and his grudge against humans would probably not be subconscious on an instinctive level, but rather a direct part of his intelligent personality on an intellectual level. But on the other hand, how does he and other people know that he has been experimented on if it is supposed to have been at the time before he manifested his quirk, and thus before he ever got an intelligent consciousness? There are many difficulties with this idea, but it is definitely worth digging deeper. A very popular theory in the My Hero Academia fandom is that Nezu may have been one of the mice experimented on at the beginning of the creation of the Quirks, when the virus was created. Later, these mice were then used to spread the virus around the world. Of course, this means that Nezu must be at least 5-6 generations old, since Deku is from the 5th generation Quirk users. If we take a look at Nezu's character profile, we see that his age is unknown, and when an age is unknown, it's usually because it's important to the story in some way. There's literally no other reason not to reveal a character's age unless it is intentionally kept secret, because otherwise the plot secret might be revealed. All of these little clues could be an indication that the virus was meant for humans and given to mice so they could spread the virus around the world. But Nezu is a rare case where the virus actually mutated and manifested as a quirk in his body, making Nezu the person he is today. Before my partner Yami continues with this video, please take a moment to like this video. Thank you, and now enjoy the rest of the video.
If only there was some kind of an organization that somehow associated itself with a mouse. And indeed there is. I'm talking about the Meta Liberation Army with its former leader Destro, who is a notorious villain in My Hero Academia. Destro's name has gone down in history on par with All For One. If you look at his picture, he actually doesn't look that evil. If you look at his uniform, you can actually see the design of a mouse with the text "one of them." So it's Destro really considered evil because he's dangerous, or because he knew something that shouldn't be revealed? If you take a closer look at his past, it becomes more strange to believe that Destro was truly evil and deserved to be on par with All For One, who is literally the personification of pure evil. In a world where the Quirks were just awakening, humanity was forced to reconstruct life in society that people knew before the Quirks appeared. Suddenly, physical strength became very important in many, even almost all aspects of life, bringing humanity back to the Stone Age. Mankind suffered from an existential crisis in which some people were even condemned and persecuted just because they were born with quirks. In a generation when quirk users were still a rather rare thing, jealousy and fear became the fuel for people's hatred of people with quirks, and people born with quirks experienced this traumatic environment. One woman in particular suffered the consequences of this dangerous environment and decided to protect and support her son who was born with a quirk. She valued him for his unique abilities and she believed that he shouldn't be persecuted just because he was born that way. She considered his abilities a blessing rather than a curse and coined him the term Quirk for his unique abilities. This woman became known as the mother of Quirks, and the son was the man named Destro, who later became the leader of the Metal Liberation Army, the very army that bears the mouse as its symbol. The original Metal Liberation Army has probably little to do what Destro's father has created. Now, it is possible that the origin of Quirks is believed to be from a virus spread by mice, and the mother of Quirks, who gave birth to the leader of the army with the symbol of the mouse, could have a coincidence? I think that's definitely something Horikoshi is trying to say. So, if there was a group of people, some kind of a powerful world organization that created this virus for humanity to manifest its quirks, what was the purpose and point of all of this? We know that the writer of My Hero Academia has announced that the series is already in its final act and the final story arc is slowly approaching, literally starting in the next few chapters. And with this latest information, it has been confirmed that My Hero Academia will indeed end as early as in 2022, if everything goes according to Horikoshi's plan. That's literally less than 50 chapters, and that creates a huge problem with the end of My Hero Academia that cannot be taken lightly. And that could be a hint that even after the defeat of All for One, the story will continue with the possible new series Beyond My Hero Academia, in which Deku and his friends are no longer in the Hero Academy, which is why the series can no longer be called My Hero Academia and therefore ends in 2022. Let me explain why. Once you think about it, My Hero Academia is all about All for One versus One for All. When All for One is defeated, the purpose of the series is fulfilled, and thus the series has reached its final end. But it is literally insane to believe that this is all there is, unless you don't believe in a happy ending for all of humanity. The reason why All for One cannot be the main threat to humanity is because humanity is already on the blink of extinction, even without All for One, due to the Quirk singularity. Even if All for One had never existed, the Quirk singularity would potentially destroy humanity. So, with or without All for One, the result is the same. Although, the Quirk singularity is only a theory postulated by Dr. Ujiko about the danger of Quirk increasing from generation to generation. This theory is proving to be more and more correct because the Quirk singularity has already been noticed several times in My Hero Academia. According to the Quirk singularity, Quirks evolve with each new generation and become stronger and much complex. However, with this increase in power, Quirks also become much difficult to control because the human body does not evolve fast enough to keep up with the Quirk. At some point, the Quirks become so powerful and so complicated that no one can control them. The Quirk singularity hypothesis is the doomsday theory of Quirk singularity. It literally speaks of the extinction of all mankind. The biggest indication that the Quirk singularity theory is actually true is that All for One, with his ability to have endless quirks, believes Dr. Ujiko, as he has most likely noticed himself that his body is unable to absorb all these newly emerging quirks, especially those of the new generation. Therefore, he has asked Dr. Ujiko to make his artificial body that will be created when he and Shigaraki merge. With this new body, they will be able to bypass the side effects of the Quirk singularity. At least that is the assumption. This plot could be perfectly linked to the theory that quirks are nothing more than an artificially created disease that was created by humans in the form of a virus and then tested on mice and eventually spread to humanity, perhaps even intentionally. If this really is the case, it could be that a secret organization planned the Quirk singularity from the beginning, so that the Quirk singularity is not just an unwanted side effect but the main goal. Such a group usually consists of people who fight for a valid reason and try to achieve their goal through evil deeds, believing that their success will be the best for all humanity. This concept is common in manga series. The main villains always seem to have an understandable reason, unlike All for One, who is simply evil. It seems like All for One is used as a distraction from the true essence events of My Hero Academia, which in my opinion is brilliant. It's not hard to come up with a possible reason why this virus was originally created. For example, if you look at the exponential population growth on Earth, according to this, sooner or later humans might die out anyway, because overpopulation causes a shortage of vital resources for the survival of all humans, creating a disease that gives people quirks so that it leads to an immense decrease in population over time would be the perfect solution to prevent humanity from completely wiping itself out due to overpopulation. In our opinion, the structure of this plot has too much potential to be resolved in less than 50 chapters, which seem to be all that's left in My Hero Academia. There are far too many secrets to be revealed, and so we believe that this could be the subject of a sequel after My Hero Academia, unless Horikoshi really decides to wrap up the entire plot in the upcoming final My Hero Academia arc. What do you guys think about this? Will there be a sequel to My Hero Academia that deals with the Quirk Singularity Doomsday? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this video, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. So, see you guys in the next video. Yummy out!